Wow, it's been a while since we've done a podcast, or straight up pod. We did a Hunter Mahan interview, but we have not done just a straight up podcast, and it's been like a while, a week at least. Yeah.
It's been times are a little different right now.
No doubt.
Times are a little different.
I'm looking back. It's been it's been like a week. Well, we did a Ham Classic, just like a classic. So we've done a Ham Classic and the Hunter Mahan. So March 26th was the last just regular straight up podcast we're doing. And this one, by the way, we're doing it for those of you listening on the regular podcast feed, or you can watch this podcast on YouTube as well.
Do you think if we went back and watched like Super Bowl I, YouTubed it, and did a Ham Classic Super Bowl I would imagine it's Lombardi versus somebody. Born 84, so you can't get too mad at me. Chris Russo's a big believer that every radio host should know all their history. I'm like, Chris, I don't know if I don't know if you've met the millennials, but I'd say now if you're 35, you should know like the 80s. But I don't think anyone my age is holding you to 60s. They don't care. But that's not an excuse. But do you think anyone would be interested? Like I'm talking old, like we like YouTubed a Mickey Mantle game.
Yeah, I think it'd be hard because like you don't really. I think for those classic, we did one classic. You have like a point of. I think your listener has to have a point of reference for all the things that are happening. Like I think, like for example, when the Ringer does rewatchables, which is obviously what Ham Classics is based on, I don't listen to the ones for the movies I haven't seen.
Yeah. You want the movies you like, right?
Yeah.
You'd pick a movie that you liked. I also think for our age group, if you keep it in the 20-year range, like when I got the idea when I was watching Tampa versus Oakland in a Super Bowl almost 20 years ago, you can just throw out random names and they're going to resonate with people, even if a guy like Jerry Rice hasn't freaking played in almost 2 decades, right? Or Tim Brown or Derek Brooks or I don't know, there's John Lynch making tackles. But I feel once you kind of fire back, probably I'd say for us, anything pre like 93, 94 would be a little tough. Just because most of the players like post 95, like even if you're watching, let's say we did Favre versus Parcells in the Super Bowl when it was Patriots, you could still be dropping like Reggie White's, Drew Bledsoe's and, oh, damn, there's rookie Teddy Bruschi, or just something like things that I do think, oh, Belichick was an assistant, right? Or there's Andy Reid on the sideline.
I think it works best if we are passionate about it. And for that, it's got to be more than just, oh, I read up on it. Let me regurgitate in this presentation that I'm doing for you what I learned reading Wikipedia and watching old videos.
Completely agree.
That said, the 84, it did cross my mind. What about rewatching the 1984 draft? Just given that quarterback class. 84?
Do you know what I think would be
84
better?
84 was the Marino draft.
Or was 83?
Was 83, 84. See,
I think it was 80. I think it was 83.
Okay.
Do you know what actually I think would be pretty cool, though? What about 2011? Like Cam Newton, Von Miller, Aldon Smith, J.J. Watt, Julio, A.J. Green. You just look back at that draft, there are some names.
I know, but at the time when Aldon got drafted, was everyone like, oh my God, no one had been watching Missouri?
But my point is, if we just did a redraft, with 2011, I think it would be like, is Aldon falling out of the first round? You are getting a couple years of sweetness, I mean, there's a balance, right? He's not going like, obviously JJ would jump him and Vaughn would stay high, but I just think Aldon's one of those that Jake Locker is a guy that would tumble, Blaine Gabbert, but like, is Julio budging really from 6? Is he going higher?
I might go higher.
Would you take Julio or JJ Watt?
That's good.
See, this is what I'm saying.
Probably Julio.
Is Von Miller a lock to go above both of them still?
Yes.
Is Cam Newton still a lock to go 1 over all those guys? See, I mean, I just think it's a fascinating because the players, like the 7 or 8 elite players, are probably better than Cam. I just think you could have I think it's a fascinating one. I was there, and I looked to my right when I was taking a leak right before the draft started. There was Blaine. Looked to my left, and there was Cam. Because all those guys, the green room, where all the NFL personnel kind of sits in front of them. I didn't even quite realize, we knew it was a good draft, but anytime a draft is happening, you don't know. Like, J.J. Watt was not J.J. Watt. Guy, we took Danny Watkins with the Philadelphia
Eagles. I remember that pick, the firefighter from Canada, right?
Yeah, it wasn't good.
I remember texting you about that. He was like a 28-year-old firefighter from Canada.
Well, like 26, but
Okay.
he was a great player. You know, it's win now mode. Win now mode.
Where was he in school?
Baylor.
So he had
Played
been a
right
firefighter
tackle.
and then went to Baylor.
No, he had gone to Butte, where Aaron Rodgers went, and was an All-American. They took him to Baylor. I think RG3 was the quarterback. So, like, they were kicking everyone's ass. The offense was unreal. He was a right tackle. One of those, you know, like, oh, we can move him to guard. He could be an all-pro guard. And it actually made sense. And then it just turned out he was a weirdo and loved fires more than blocking. And it just was a disaster. Now, we're drafting, you know, in the end of the first round. It wasn't like J.J. Watt got passed for him.
Yeah.
Again, I was just Aaron Boy back then. But in fairness, I did check him out on tape, and I was like, yeah, this guy's good, you know? It was one of those, like, he had the talent. It was just all the stuff up here.
And that pick was in the 20s. It's not like that pick was 8, right?
I think there was a moment
Wasn't that pick like 23 or something? It was the second first rounder the Eagles had or something like that year?
25. It was a weird deal.
Yeah.
I do know there was a lot of uncertainty early with a pick. I'm talking, guy, it was out of a lockout. By about the end of training camp, I don't think people felt great. Yeah. Here's the other problem.
That was the dream team.
A guy named Jason Kelsey was the 5th round pick. Maybe he was a 6th round pick. Same draft. And it's like when you have a guy in your draft class, and it's like your 6th rounder is your alpha, and you're like, which big picture it turns out okay. You know, Kelsey's going to go down as an all-time great Philadelphia Eagle and probably like a borderline Hall of Famer when it's all said and done. But you're like, our 5th rounder, 6th rounder should not be better than our 1st rounder.
And you tell yourself it all takes care of itself. Yeah. It all shakes out in the wash, but you really would like to have that 1st rounder back.
Yeah.
All right. Before we get into it, John, let's tell people a couple things. This is not sponsors. We're just a couple companies that have been strong in the Bay Area for a long time that are sports fans. I remember meeting the guys at Evergood Sausage years ago. We were at 95.7. You've continued. You've had them on the Periscope. So this is not advertising. Obviously, they are like everybody at a time where they're trying to provide for the community and for their employees. And so we just wanted to pass along a couple, I don't even know what you call them, just messages of support.
Well, I mean, I think this is a time when you got to support the local food industry. It's throwing everyone off and for a loop. And Evergood Sausage, I get their pineapple sausage. They've been in business for over 90 years in the Bay Area. My guy, Donnie Miller, who's 3rd generation, his grandpa started the company a long time ago, 90 years. Might have been his great-grandpa. And his dad played football at Cal. They are just loyal Bay Area people who produce sausages, and I like to eat sausages. And I get them at my local Safeway. You can get them at Costco. And, you know, I'm just trying to support our friends and also our friends at Kinder's. They have a lot of, like, you can find Kinder's barbecue sauce and you know, dry rubs and stuff at the stores, but they also have legitimate restaurants that I got one right by my house, Parkside one in Walnut Creek, and I get the barbecue chicken sandwich. And obviously the restaurant industry has been thrown for the ultimate loop. They can't have people in there. The place is always packed, you know, lunch and dinner, and it's just pickup only right now. So if you're in the area, I think there's 10 in the greater Bay Area. First one started in San Pablo in like the 1940s. I'm a barbecue chicken guy. They got good tri-tip sandwiches. They just got a lot of good barbecue. You know, if you're out and about picking something up, doing whatever, and you're hungry, you want to get food for your family, they could use your business.
I've been craving some barbecue, John. It's a great idea. And like you said, the Kinder's barbecue sauces in your grocery stores too. So it's a good combo right there. That's a good combo. All right.
We're community men, guy.
That's right. So if you're not in the Bay Area, maybe you can order some of that online.
Yeah, they got good meat.
All right. So a couple things. One, we just did a YouTube video about the virtual draft, doing the draft over Zoom. And one thing that's come out of it, I think the one that probably got the most attention, the Cowboys have been putting out like their, not the whole interview that they do with people on Zoom, like draft prospects, but like a 1.5-minute clip. So they put one out of somebody on Tuesday morning. The Jalen Hurts one is the one I think a lot of people have seen.
The guy that was out Tuesday morning was the Wisconsin linebacker the Vaughn, I think
Yeah,
his
yeah,
last
yeah,
name,
that's
Vaughn. He's a good player. I didn't know that much about him. I texted around like borderline first rounder, but guy, they have Jalen Smith and Van Der Esch. Like they don't need this guy.
What's funny watching the video, I thought was like, it's exactly the way any other job interview would go. Like Mike McCarthy's just like, what do we need to know about you? You know, what's the most important thing about you you'd like to know? You'd like us to know? It's like, well, you know, I think I play hard. It's just like, it was a little bit of an insight.
You know what's unique about that spot for these guys? And this guy played at Wisconsin. Jalen Hurts has been at Alabama. It's still, anytime you're going up a level in life, it's still an intimidating situation. I mean, if you're these guys, especially doing Dallas, you're looking at fucking Jerry Jones on your Zoom sitting at his couch at his house in a pair of shorts and a cowboy polo, exactly what you or me would be wearing if we owned the Cowboys and we were self-quarantined.
That's what I wear without owning the Cowboys.
I actually think this whole process, watching some of these teams operate, is a little humanizing to the league. It's like they're just kind of like everyone else, right? And like you said, it just, at the end of the day, there's a football element to it, but you're just kind of asking people about people, who they are, what they stand for. If a guy has never been in trouble, like there are going to be some guys in the draft that have been arrested or suspended or academically probate, whatever, and just have issues that you might want to dig into. But if a guy's just a good character guy and you think he's a good player, you still got to ask him what do you ask him, right?
Yeah.
About his family, about what makes him tick. And I don't know, it's kind of a weird spot.
But I mean, you know what I think of too is, and I remember like we've heard these stories from our friend Greg Papa, who has just a treasure trove of stories, but specifically Al Davis stories about how Al used to have, you know, a guy in every city that would read the local newspapers and send him clippings so he could do recon on other teams before rotoworld.com existed and you could read every local teams. And I know you've told me before when you worked in the league, that was one of the jobs, was just to compile clippings and news and notes and little nuggets and all that kind of stuff on teams. So you used to be able to see who a team visited with. Like that to me is one of the more fascinating parts of the draft. It's just how you do recon to have an idea of, all right, we know the fighting Middlekauffs really like this quarterback out of Utah based on the meeting they had with him, based on the fact that they had a scout at 5 of his road games, based on all this various. And then you read other stories about guys who they make a point not to go see a guy.
Well, the Chiefs did that with Mahomes. They went totally still.
So that whole dynamic, that whole chess game is really fascinating. And so, you know, you wonder, can you use Zoom in that way?
I think the key is, but here's the other thing. You, like when I pick up the phone, if I'm the West Coast scout and I'm double checking all my guys, we have the information. The number one, like one of the main questions I ask them is, who'd you visit with? Who'd you talk with? This is pre-COVID-19 when you actually could follow. You still might miss some. Some players go, you know, my agent told me not to tell. And it's not like illegal for them to say that.
Yeah.
Like, okay. A lot of guys, it's just, they just answer the question, right? Oh, the Cowboys.
They do it in the local. John, they'll do it in the local paper. They'll do like a local interview. It's always if a guy does like a guy plays at LSU, he does his local Baton Rouge. They're like, hey, so who likes you? Oh, you know, I had a good meeting with the Niners.
See, to me, it even resonates more. I remember growing up in Davis, like when a UC Davis guy might get drafted, it was like, oh, the Cowboys brought him in.
Right.
Eagles brought him in, and it was a big deal to me. That in some of the big, or even Fresno State, when you have a guy that like this guy's going to get drafted, it was a really big deal. It's going to be a little harder to tell, like how much I just zoomed a guy for an hour. Does that even, are they just checking up on me? Now, I would say if Jerry is going to sit there and Zoom, you would probably say he's not going to waste his time, right? Well, but is there a little gamesmanship?
Doesn't he just love that part of the job, first of all?
What else is he doing? Well, he is the general manager.
We talked about the Panthers social media thing a while ago with Cam. Like, this is where if you're in lockstep with your social media team, you say, we want to throw people off the scent. Maybe we don't put out the video that we did with the guy we like. We want to throw them off the scent. Maybe we put out a guy we don't really think we're going to draft, a part of the video where we're all laughing, yucking it up, make it look like we really love each other. I wonder if any team would go to that extent.
Someone tweeted me, did I send you or did you send me the Jalen Hurts video?
I sent it to you, but
okay,
you sent it to me first. I don't know.
Okay, so someone tweeted at me or DM me this morning that if they asked me, like the Cowboys posted it right on Monday. and they said, "Do you think that's a scare tactic for Dak?" Like, hey, who knows?
Theory.
And my response was, well, whether you're going to pay Dak the 1 year, $27.5 million or sign him to a $30+ million a year contract, you're going to need a guy making about $600,000 as the backup. So to me, the Cowboys would be in the draft a quarterback in the 3rd, 4th round to be Dak's backup for financial reasons, right? You can't have, there's a reason. Who's the Seattle's backup? We never know. It's always like the dude from TCU that got arrested. Like I have no clue who the Seahawks backup is. You know why? Because he's probably always going to be on the minimum salary. Once you start making premium dollars, and especially a team like the Cowboys that are paying all these other people, like luckily with like Jimmy or Derek Carr, guys that are in the 26 and below, you got a little wiggle room, right? You could justify it. Well, we can pay a guy, Derek's making $20 million. You go Marcus 27, you're like, we have a $27 million quarterback. If Jimmy's making 25 and Mullins this year's making 1.5, you're like, oh, we got a $28 million quarterback. If you have a $35 million quarterback, you can't have a $5 million backup, right? Because you're just like, all of our chips are in the middle of the table on Russell, Rodgers, Dak, whoever. You have to be in the mode of having I would imagine the Chiefs are going to be in this kind of lane here relatively soon whenever they pay Mahomes, right? They're going to need they're either going to have to get veteran minimum Matt Moore, which kind of feels like Andy likes, but eventually he'll draft some flyer in the 4th or 5th round that he just has at $600,000. Mm-hmm. You start balancing the books. It's the thing about the NFL. You have this sweet spot when you get a Dak, when you get a Mahomes, when you get a Russell Wilson. You really do got to win it all. And then it's all kind of gravy. Then you might get back. Like I was thinking the other day, like, could Seattle win another Super Bowl? Yeah, they might. And they'll probably have one more legit run in them, right? Where they're in the championship game or they make it to the Super Bowl. But it is a lot more difficult now for them, right?
Well, the other part of it, John, is not only you really need to win it, you really need the quarterback to be as good as you're paying him. Because as years roll over, like Mahomes will become the highest paid quarterback by far in year 1. By year 3, guys that aren't as good as him will be making as much money as him. And then the Chiefs will be back to having a little bit of an advantage, right? Like that's where Dak is like, okay, Dak, we're going to pay you like the guys that eat up a large percentage of the salary cap for other teams like Russell, but you have to be able to deliver that much or else the whole thing falls apart.
Remember for like 3 years, once it was like, Steph's ankles actually aren't bad. We got him for 3 years for $33 million the next 3 years. Right. Iguodala, Kevin Durant. It was like, motherfuckers, it's on. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, Steph needs a Supermax? And it's become a lot more hit or miss lately. And football is very similar to that with the quarterback the crazy thing is it doesn't even take Mahomes, right? It just takes Kirk Cousins. It just takes Dak Prescott. Their value, what they're going to get, whether they're look at Jared Goff. Like we've argued over Carson Wentz, whether he can stay healthy or not, but I don't think anyone ever argues like he's a max level player, right? He's that talent. He's worth it. Now there's risk in it with injuries. I think it gets difficult when you're like, is Dak and Kirk Cousins and guys like that max level players?
It happened. We're in the Bay Area, obviously. It happened to a degree. Now you don't have a cap per se in the same way the other sports do, but when the Giants extended Madison Bumgarner when he was 22 years old to a very team-friendly deal. Same thing. The consequences are different in baseball just because you can you have more freedom with your salaries, but still.
I read a headline, I think it was yesterday. I think it was either McCaffrey's agent or it might have been Marty Herney of the Panthers was like, yeah, we're having internal discussions about extending McCaffrey. And I wonder if you're them, you think about like, if this guy keeps putting up these historic numbers, he's just going to be an outlier. Could we get him on a deal relative to running back / receiver, something like that just looks like one of the steals of the league? Because he's clearly one of the best non-quarterbacks.
I'm going to make a note. That feels like it could be a YouTube video.
Could we? Yeah, I mean, how much? Think about this guy. 2 years ago, Le'Veon Bell is a free agent, got $27 million. We talk about the receivers a lot, getting 60+ million guaranteed. Like, where does McCaffrey fall in this? Remember Jimmy Graham had the argument? Mm-hmm. McCaffrey's like, I don't know, guys. Check how many catches I have multiple years. Over triple digits both years. triple. I'm not catching 60 balls. I'm catching 100 plus. And if worst case scenario, okay, you want me to just be a slot receiver? Pay me like a receiver? That's fine. Just move me out there. Has a player ever, it happens to coaches do it to players, but has a player just ever been like, I'm switching positions? What are you going to play? I'm a receiver now.
But it doesn't even matter. Like the Jimmy Graham one, Jimmy claimed he was a receiver because he was in the slot or out wide on 70% of his snaps. And the arbitrator was like, nah, still a tight end.
But see, where McCaffrey would get screwed is his percentage where he's in the slot and behind the quarterback would probably be at worst 50-50, right? He's just going to be behind the quarterback in the running back area. If we just watch Panther games, he's always back there. Even when he catches the ball, he's screwed.
They should start just calling him a tight end.
Well, to me, he should just, like on his Twitter account, Christian McCaffrey, wide receiver, his Instagram receiver. Don't call me a running back, call me a receiver.
But Matt Rule should start talking about him like he's a tight end.
Yeah, I would go at Yahoo, at CBS Sports, at all the fantasy deals. I'm a wide receiver.
Right. And then Rule will be like, one thing we love to line our tight end up behind our quarterback. It's really a new offense. It's like, wow,
Guy, I think running backs are cheaper than tight ends. It's close.
But tight ends are much cheaper than receivers.
Much cheaper than receivers, yeah.
I don't know.
Tough call. I feel for McCaffrey. I think he's going to get lowballed.
Yeah, he will. He will. The thing that really got us going on this Tuesday morning was the MLB story. Give me some baseball, John. So Major League Baseball's trying desperately to find a way to get baseball back. And so here's the plan. This is not actually happening for those of you that have missed the story, but this is one of the plans they are laying out. All 30 teams play with no fans in Phoenix. They play at the 10 spring training facilities there. They play at Chase Field where the Diamondbacks play, and quote-unquote, perhaps other nearby fields. So I don't know. Maybe they play at a height. I don't even know what that means.
ASU?
Well, ASU plays at an old – ASU or Arizona? Arizona plays at the old spring training facility. So you're right. That's definitely a good field. ASU's field is nice. So those are possibilities as well. Players and coaching staffs and other essential personnel would be sequestered at local hotels where they would live in relative isolation, travel only to and from the stadium. Federal officials for the CDC have said they've been supportive of the plan that would adhere to strict isolation, promote social distancing, and allow Major League Baseball to become the first professional sports team to return. Here are a few, John, of the headline details. They would implement an electronic strike zone to allow the umpire to maintain sufficient distance from the catcher and the batter.
That's my favorite one.
That's your okay.
Well, because it's like, okay, you're going because you're going robo up, but you're still putting the home plate guy. You're just moving him back like 6 feet. Love that one.
No mound visits from the catcher or the pitching coach. Love that one for like a real practice. That just speed it up.
I do too.
7-inning doubleheaders with an earlier than expected start date that could allow baseball to come closer to 162 games.
That's crazy.
I don't love that one. Regular use of on-field microphones by players as an added bonus for TV viewers. Cool.
Like that one.
Yep.
Like that one.
And this one is my favorite. Players sitting in the empty stands 6 feet apart, the recommended social distancing space instead of in a dugout.
Here's the problem with that one, though. Sometimes it's a little difficult to get up there. Like there's not like a smooth way to get there, but
that's not the only problem.
What's the?
Well, I mean, there's a million problems with that one. Like, so everyone's driving their own cars, then I assume, because you're not busing from the stadium to the hotel and back because you can't.
Well, Guy, you're still going to be around each other.
That's my
you're
point.
Bust.
Is like the sitting 6 feet apart to me in the stands.
Once everyone's corona's free, you can be in the
that one seems crazy because you can't give everybody a car because guys will just go do their own thing. Like, just 4 of us went to the golf course, which is closed, but we just snuck on. So,
but eventually, like by June, they might all be open. Why would they have to be sequestered?
Well, yeah, at that point, then this whole thing would just let everybody back. They can go play in their home ballparks if that's what's happening. But in the world where the world is as it is today, sitting 6 feet apart, no one's going to high five? Maybe they won't. Like, that's not that crazy.
Bash Bros.
But everyone's going to stay 6 feet apart. That one seems pretty unrealistic to me. Now, especially if they're all wearing masks anyway, because there's a pickoff play at first, they're standing right next to each other.
Guy, they're not going to wear masks when they play.
Are you sure?
No.
I think that's what they're doing in Korea.
To me, there is zero chance, 100% zero chance Major League Baseball players will wear masks. That would not happen. I could not see that happening. But can we just start at the basic
well, then in that
premise?
case, you can't have a guy pick off play at first. Like, if we're going to have a pickoff play at first, then why are they sitting 6 feet apart in the stands?
But again, they've already been tested. They're corona-free. That's part of this deal.
Well, yeah, I understand, given that if we can trust that they're not sneaking out of the hotel at night. But I'm just saying, if they're all corona-free, then they don't need to sit 6 feet apart in the stands.
Yeah, I mean, I think that some of these are negotiable.
The Korean Baseball League, John, they're playing with masks on.
Yeah, I can't see the Major League guys doing that. But can we just start with the basic premise of them trying to come back?
Yeah.
Because, of course, to me, I read this late last night. I think the story broke West Coast time at like 9 o'clock. He tweeted out the article.
Jeff Passan.
Yeah, and it was actually sneaky longer than I thought. I was like, God, this thing's long. It was good and juicy. Everyone that I saw on Twitter today hates the idea. Of course they do. I loved it.
What do they hate about it? Because I have really stayed off Twitter here last.
One thing that I hear a lot and I see on Twitter from especially media people is, why do sports want to come back? Sports, why are sports? And I think they talk about it like it's little league or high school sports, like it's just like it's non-essential. Here's the problem with that line of thinking. Baseball, for example, it is not little league. It's a $10 billion industry. And I would imagine, I'm just going to educated guess, 9 of that 10 billion get generated from March 1st through October 30th. Like the majority of that 10 that pays for fucking everything, from the stadiums to the players to it all, gets generated over that stretch of the baseball season. Now, Passan wrote that the majority of the 10 billion, or a large percentage of the 10 billion, are gate receipts.
Right.
A lot of people tweeted at me, said that MLB Network said that only accounts for 30%. So maybe,
but I think here's where I think it makes sense. He wrote the largest proportion of the annual revenues are from the gate receipts. So it could be 30% of the 10 billion is from the gate, and no other number is higher than 30%. So when you take,
so maybe TV's 25, maybe merchandise another 20.
I think that's how it works.
Okay, makes sense. Local revenue per 15. Okay, I get it. So you just remove the 30. You are immediately, if you're just going, you're at 7 billion. But your expenses, I don't know if people have followed pro sports. They have a massive fucking expense called the players. So if you start playing, what do the players, if you make $100,000 and you're furloughed or whatever, kind of like the players are, it's out of your control. It is what it is. It's in a contract. You can't do anything. But the moment they go, okay, it's time to work again, what would you say? Well, pay me my salary, right? I want that $100,000. Well, that company is used to revenue coming in to pay that $100,000, and they'd be losing a huge chunk of it. That's why I see everyone on social media freaks out when people get laid off or furloughed. It's basically because revenue has stopped for these companies. So baseball, I like, we're not going to stay quarantined forever. We're fucking almost a month into this thing. Like, it's ideally, if the curve flattens, we can get back to the real world. So why wouldn't some of these companies, like that's what Major League Baseball is, try to be the first to jump on it? And I'm not saying this is going to work or not, but I do like their mindset of, we got to get back, or we are going to be, if the season does not happen, there's a reason Donald Trump's giving out subsidies to all these industries to keep them afloat. What if baseball just went from 10 billion to 0 for a year? What, like the A's survive, Tampa survive? How do these teams survive? I'll tell you what does not happen. The owner does not cut a personal check to keep the team afloat. So either the league floats alone or the team, something happens. Like, this is, they're not recession proof either. To me, it got me thinking why all these commissioners, the NFL was probably just a part of it, and base and even golf, but why the most important people on that Donald Trump call with all the commissioners were basketball and baseball. Like, can we get some subsidies if we can't come back? Like, can you help us out?
Yeah, like, I mean, the good news, you made this point to me, basketball, in the end, played a lot of its season, so they did make money, right?
They did generate cash for 6 months or
Yeah.
whatever.
Baseball would be generating none. Like one thing
But their playoffs are a huge percentage.
Well, yeah, there's no doubt.
cash
But
cow.
like as an example, the Warriors. I saw Anthony Slater wrote this the other day. They weren't going to the playoffs. They lost basically 7 home games. Now, the much bigger part of the pie, that's an oversimplification because they're losing concerts, which is a big fucking deal to them. But
you get the Levi's email that whatever the monster trucks or whatever just got canceled.
Yep.
Like everything's getting canceled.
Yeah. But baseball's times 10. Now all their dates are buying. Like they have concerts too when their teams are on the road and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of
but their 81 home games are huge.
They're
right?
massive. It's 40,000. I mean, in theory, 40,000 people. So yeah, it's a huge deal, and I think it would not be. We talk about like, is it a good look to have a draft, whatever. I know it would not be a good look is baseball teams getting subsidies, right? I think that's probably the last thing they want to have to try to get.
Okay, so it's like we just have teams go under and just let natural selection take its place. That's fine. See a teams.
I'm not arguing with you. I get it, but I think people would be hard pressed to be okay with that.
My point is though, they don't need subsidies because you can come back. You just might have to do it a little differently than normal because it feels like at least on social media, people are rooting for the shutdown to last like 6 months.
See, I don't think people are. I don't think that's true. I don't think people are rooting for the shutdown to last. I think people are being overly cautious about making sure that when it does come back, it's not forced in a way that creates a larger health issue in the end. I don't think people in the media are rooting for it to last 6 months.
Yeah, see, I think a lot of people in the media get a little anti-business. It's just natural, and they look at this like these corrupt guys forcing the issue. It's all greed. It's greed because they're trying to keep the business afloat.
But I don't think But they all make money when the sport is happening.
But that's where I'm saying it's convoluted.
But I don't think they're rooting for it to not. I think they would love for it to come back because it's safe for it to come back. I don't think anybody is rooting for it not to be safe for it to come back.
Yeah, but my point is sometimes in business, you can't, especially social media, if you just follow their blueprint, you'll lose. The NBA is a good example. They've kind of followed theirs, and they're losing. But you have to be aggressive and act, and that's why I give baseball a lot of credit for being out front.
That's fair, but to say people are rooting for it not to be safe to come back, I do not think is true.
No, I don't say they're rooting for it not to be safe to come back. I'm just saying you get the vibe of like they wouldn't mind if like some of these leagues hurt a little bit. It's just it impacts so many other people.
Yeah,
it just makes me.
I don't agree.
Again,
with that.
Guy, I don't think you're spending enough time on there, and I'm trying to do less too. It's an uncomfortable place right now.
I get that it's uncomfortable, and I get that, but I think I think what that stems from is do not force people to come back before it's safe for it to come back. I don't think people are rooting for it not to happen. I think that's the difference. Especially, to me, the difference is in pro sports and college sports. Like asking college athletes to come back and play in front of an empty stadium when schools are not in session, I think is crazy.
Well, but 100%. I'm talking nothing.
No,
about
I know you're not, but I'm just saying that is one where I think there is a real, hey guys, like I definitely feel what you're talking about there. I don't feel it with pro sports as much.
The difference too with pro sports, some of these guys want to, I would say a large majority want to come back. Why? Because it's their money.
So
it's how they get their cash.
You talking about the media or the athletes?
I'm talking about the players. I think the media, I can't even, I'm sorry to even bring up the media, but I think they have had a rough couple weeks. Just the overall vibe of everything and I'm not saying anyone's rooting for the corona, but it's just like, it's been a bizarre experience on social media with people like that view sports like it's like Little League, like you said, with the kids. No, this is pro sports that functions. Our society, you can't shut down America, and we have, and you can't, but we've had to pay for all these businesses or else all of America would go under. I would imagine by the end of this week, we'll have 20 million in unemployment. We are in an economic disaster right now, potentially, if this lasts all the way through, let's just say, middle of May. It is a fucking disaster. Well, you know who it is also a disaster? I mean, that's what gets back to the sports. It's a disaster right now for the NBA. It could be a real disaster for baseball, given that they never even started. We're talking economic disasters. And that's where I think that a lot of people in the media sometimes they just struggle with the way money works, and they just don't have a great feel for it.
Okay, but that's different than rooting against it to be okay for things to come back.
But everyone's react to me. It's like not necessarily. It's not going to come back perfectly. There's not just going to be like snap your fingers and then just 30,000.
Totally,
it's going to be a little uncomfortable.
I've been saying that from the beginning, but
it's going to be uncomfortable at first whenever someone first starts. 100%.
Yeah, but the difference
someone's
is
going to have to start first,
no doubt. But time will tell who started too early and who didn't. Did anybody start too early, or did the person that started first wait till the right time? That's what history will tell us.
Like Adam Silver's taking all this credit. We ended first.
Yeah, but again, John, that is irrelevant.
But I'm just saying
they had their hand forced. Anybody that's paying attention knows they had their hand forced.
I think it's irrelevant who comes back first because they're all going to come back and no one's going to, unless someone like dies of corona.
But this is my point. It's irrelevant as long as it's done the right way. And I think people are rooting for it to be done the right way.
What is the right way? Though there is no right way. There's no blueprint on this.
No, there's no blueprint.
Wait till vaccine.
No. I don't. The point is, we will know. History will tell us if we waited long enough or not. That's what I'm saying. We'll know if baseball comes back.
I mean, like 10 years or whatever.
No, we'll know if baseball comes back and 7 players get corona in the first week that they fucked it up.
Yeah, but I'd say this. This is back to the basketball thing. All those basketball players got corona, and they're all like fine. So it's like, well, what is it even a big deal if they're all sequestered? Because it's already been said.
Well, but the question, but again, so 7 baseball players get coronavirus in a week. Does baseball continue or does it not? Like that'll be. NBA stopped when it became apparent they had to stop. I don't give them credit for that.
So then the NBA comes back, one guy gets corona. Does everyone have to stop then? That's where it gets kind of.
Well, yeah, I think the complication now the difference in timing will be immediate tests for everybody. Do we have the test where it's like 5 minutes you get a test result? Right.
That was part of the deal here in baseball.
But yeah, if we don't have that, then yeah, you do have to stop because you don't know, did the guy get it a week ago from a guy on another team that like it would have to stop. And I think that's to me, that's the risk is like, if you're going to start, you just got to be ready to start. And I think
that's part of basketball and baseball. They're going to have the immediate testing ready.
Okay, that's fine. But that's where I'm saying like what happened a month ago doesn't like we got to make sure that the environment is different when you restart than it was a month ago.
I guess my overall point, let's say a guy gets corona. I guess if no one had corona, how would they get corona? But as you can see, people would be out and about if it's June. Does he have to stop playing? Do you have minor? I saw Mark Kreidler had a good tweet. The one complicated part about this, anyone knows that follows baseball, like guys get hurt, you bring dudes up from the minors. Like it's not just, you couldn't just roll with your 25-man roster and be like, we're good for 4 months. That's not the guys strain arms, especially the way they haven't been training. It could be actually kind of ugly. You'd probably need like 45 guys just kind of hovering and ready.
Right.
I'm not saying
you would. I think you're right. You probably expand rosters.
It's an extremely complicated thing. I just give them credit for being aggressive to get back. And my point is, like, I am not going to feel shame for saying I fucking can't wait for them to come back. And when they come back, you know what? Fine. It's not going to – but it's not – but on social media, people are not going to be okay with it.
No, but
that's
John,
a big – I'm telling you, they will get crushed.
Some people will hate it.
Most people will, because it's not going to be comfortable.
Maybe your time, but no, most people is not your fucking timeline. Those are not the same thing. That's my point. Your timeline is not like, okay, those are two different things.
I guess most people on social media is what I'm talking about, which includes the media, who's the loudest.
Some media will hate it, some won't, whatever. But my point is hating it for the right reasons or the wrong reasons. And maybe the people that hate it and are wrong. Time will tell. Time will tell, but again, the reason I start arguing about this point, that's different than saying I'm rooting for it to never come back because I want to teach a lesson to millionaires. To me, that is not what's happening. Now, are people saying they are putting people at risk because they're greedy and that they are wrong? Okay,
that's my point.
But I'm good. We're fleshing this out. But to me, then what you're saying is there are people that are You are saying they are wrong to be saying that this is not worth considering. That's totally fair, but I think that's different than rooting against it.
My point is baseball would stand up and be like, you guys got to stop talking about us like Little League. We're a $10 billion business. And if it's going to be uncomfortable when we can come back, even if we can come back and keep people in relatively safe as we possibly can given the time when it feels like other businesses are open up, you have to realize if we just don't play this season, which I think some people would be like, if it never gets to the point where you're fully like 100%, and it's never going to be 100% in the next couple months, but there's going to be a time when it's maybe like 90% or 85%. You're going to have to push the envelope because we will have teams just go under. So we just might lose 3 or 4 teams because that's what fucking happens in the real world. That owner...
No, we probably should lose 3 or 4 teams.
Well, yeah, but the team with the A's, he ain't cutting a check to like keep his team afloat.
Yeah,
the Rays, all these teams. So it's like,
well,
but
again, the league. I think that's a situation where the league makes sure, right, the teams don't disappear. I think the league steps in those scenarios.
Well, that's what the NBA's had to do and potentially have to do right now. But again, they were much more equipped because they did have 80% of the season. They got a bunch of television revenue. They did have some cash.
Yeah.
Right. Where I think baseball, the cash hasn't started flowing.
And one thing Passon wrote was like there was a large gap because your local TV revenue is the money that you get. It's not just distributed equally. And there's a large gap. Like the biggest and the least is like $100 million. So one of the things they've said is if we do this, we've got to at least change it for this year where everybody gets an equal cut of the money. Yeah,
to me that makes – however they come back, baseball and basketball, I'm rooting for them to come back soon, Guy. I really am because the information we have, the corona, it feels – again, I'm quarantining the shit out of quarantine. So are you. So is everyone I know. That if this goes, it's April 7th. We've been on this for almost a month now. You give it another 4 weeks, that we're going to be 7-8 weeks deep into this. Like we should get to a time we got to start open. We're going to have to open things up again. We can't just shut down. And I include these guys, and everyone's like, "Why does baseball have to come back?" Well, they can't afford not to if other people are coming back. Now they have to adapt. No fans. I don't know exactly how to do it. I don't have all the answers, but I will be fully support. And I like their mindset also of beating the NBA to the punch because there might be a period of 3 or 4 weeks where the NBA, and there was an article yesterday by Baxter Holmes where a GM was like, we will not do it if it is not socially acceptable. And I go, what is socially acceptable? Because everything that's socially acceptable to you guys is based on Twitter. And then the real world, like you've said, in fairness, you're right, it's completely different. They might be waiting long. So baseball can actually take advantage and kind of get – I just saw Arash – Markazi, the dude that writes for the LA Times, had the numbers on WrestleMania on Saturday and Sunday. They did it in front of no fans. It was like record-breaking numbers.
Well, isn't Dana White going to buy an island for the UFC to go fight on?
Well, it's another thing. Everyone thinks Dana White's crazy. He just goes, we can't afford to not fight. We're fighting. And you know what? There's the aggressive people and the non-aggressive people. Again, I'm not saying put lives at risk, but there's going to come a balance of you're going to have to weigh your risk here. And right now, like I'm not supporting it April 7th, but I'm talking about mid-May. That's a month and a half. Everyone freaks the fuck out when you start talking about May, June, or July. It's like, guys, it's April 7th. We've already been quarantining for almost a month. Can't we just have some hope of middle of May? I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I'm not Dr. Fauci.
But that's
here.
My point. Is like it goes both ways though. Like to be so positive that that to not do it would be a disservice to the world or to those companies. We just don't know.
Well, the curve is legitimately flattening.
Yeah, good.
Right? That's happening.
When the CDC says, yeah, you can go play some baseball games, cool. I've said this from the beginning. I don't have an opinion. I just know what I think. But I'm not making predictions. I do have an opinion, but I'm not making predictions based on my takes.
I'm not either.
No. But all I'm saying is like I think this thing has gotten pretty clear cut in terms of who the experts are and who they aren't. So if Major League Baseball says we've talked to the experts and this is what they say we can do, then I don't know how you could really argue against it.
I would say that they'll have a better idea, and I agree they have to have a contingency plan in. There might be a decent chance that you can just play at your local stadiums by the middle of May and just have no fans there.
Yeah, I guess the problem there is
travel and it's complicated. This one, I think they view it, and why the NBA want to do the Vegas bubble, they can just control it. Like we talk about the draft, one thing I think that's making a lot of these teams uncomfortable, it's easy for them to say we're going to get hacked. It's just, to me, it's out of their control. They're like, we're on this program that we didn't create. Like, it's just baseball and basketball realize, well, fuck it. There are going to be hoops in different cities and different towns and different states. Let's just go to a place where we can control it and attempt to make 70% of our revenue. And that's where I think, back to the media, it's like, guys, you do understand 70% is better than zero. And if they go to zero, these sports, I mean, we're talking major issues, financial issues. And it's very pro player. It tends to be like the media, like the players aren't going to get paid. And I actually give a lot of these players credit. Now, I know they're super rich, but guys can be young and immature. I'm shocked. I guess not shocked because a lot of these guys are so rich. No one said anything yet. Like, my house payment's big. Just a comment, because those used to be famous like when we were growing up. Those comments happen all the time. And maybe it's because the media used to look for them and like try to get them. They knew. I don't think the guys necessarily look for them as much, try to make a guy look bad. It's kind of just a bad look. But I just wonder how long we go in baseball season, because the other thing in baseball season, unlike the NBA, a lot of younger players in baseball actually don't make that much money. And I bet they kind of live maybe more luxurious life than Aaron Judge, making $650,000. He ain't making $30 million a year. That you start getting, however they factored in like their unemployment with this pot, his numbers probably like what he's used to making. Is one thing for Stanton or,
Right.
Scherzer. These guys have huge cash in the bank. It's another thing for Matt Olson, Chapman, some of the young guys that actually are probably getting money that, who knows, maybe his house costs more than what he's getting. I don't know. I'm just saying it's going to start getting weird the longer this goes for them economically,
right.
financially. And that to me, I think more people that in America right now, I would say 50 and under, are much more frightened and threatened economically than of the corona.
Yeah.
You think that's fair?
I agree. Yep. I think that's fair. Because I think they say, okay, I can control, right or wrong, I can just stay in my house. But how do I make money?
Most people are.
Right.
Yeah.
How do I
I'm laid
pay my
off.
rent? How do I put food, like literally foot on the table? A, how do I fucking go get food? And B, how do I pay for it?
I talked to someone the other day who said their kids go to private schools. Obviously, schools are canceled. Their private school does not. You have to keep paying. And he's like, there's nothing we can do. It's like kind of crazy, but they're not going to give you a prorated deal. And if you stop paying, they might not let you back in. I don't know, but he's just like, everyone at the school is paying. Half the people are really mad, but there's nothing. They got you by the balls. And I think that's happening in a lot of these towns, that it's just getting very, very complicated. And that's why, again, Guy, I am just pro, first and foremost, quarantining, corona ending, but us living a fucking economic at some level of normalcy in hopefully the next 45, 60 days.
Yeah, I agree with you. But I guess the original point was I think everybody is pro that because it benefits everybody. And even the people in the media that think owners are being greedy, let's say, in the end, they just know, greedy or not, those guys, for me, I need to pay bills. So I do think it is in everybody's best interest to get everything back and rolling. Now,
can you play games outside in Arizona in the middle of July?
Can you? What do you mean? Like, is it too hot?
Yeah, I mean,
clearly. So that's to me, the 7-inning doubleheader thing is like, guys, do not try and play 154 games, because I do think you are asking. I shouldn't say a lot, but I think you're stretching these. If you start playing 14 innings a day, and these guys are 4.5, you're asking them to stick to the rules and like just stay in your hotel and don't do anything stupid. You could argue this gets them out to the field. I think that's too. I would try and make it like a 90-game season and just play 9-inning regular games. Doubleheaders to me in the heat seems like I'm not going to say taking advantage. They're getting paid, but that's a little too much. Because I'll tell you this: I saw Brett Anderson tweeted a shot. Did you see this?
Is he in the league right now?
Yeah, he's got a $5 million contract from somebody.
Okay.
Did you see this?
I think someone forwarded it at me. I didn't really look at it.
He tweeted a screenshot from the Passan article, and he highlighted this passage. The logistics would be enormous and cumbersome on the league side and would require the buy-in of players whose sources expect to be skeptical of separating from their families for an indefinite amount of time, perhaps as long as 4.5 months. Okay? So they're going to have to be away from their families for 4.5 months. Brett Anderson retweeted that and wrote, "It begins and ends right there." In other words, the player's not going to have that.
Guess what, Brett? You don't fucking speak for every player.
I read that and was like, bro, you got a $5 million contract. That means over 162 games, you make $30,000 a game. And I actually don't want to be totally dismissive. Like, let's say you get 2 young kids, if you just take a step back and go, I'm not going to see my family for 4.5 months. It would be easy for me to say, hey man, 4.5 months, like it's not that big a deal. Get back to work. But okay, that's on a human level. That would be hard. That would be hard. But this is to your point where it's like, that's the sticking point. Like, because I know a lot of people right now, the 20 million or 10 million that are unemployment. If you said, suck it up for 4.5 months, you'll get $30,000 a day. They go, fuck it. Okay. I'll make it work. And that's probably an easy argument for me to make from my couch. But that kind of pissed me off. Where it's like, hold on. It begins and ends right there. Like, that's not making $5 million this year.
Does Brett Anderson speak for the players?
I don't know. I don't know. But Passon did right. The buy-in of the players on this, the source says they would be skeptical of separating from their families for an indefinite amount of time. That might be a sticking point for them. And that's where you would get, like, okay, what starts to happen from a public standpoint where people would start to get opinions. Either A, dude, get back to work. If the CDC says this is the only way we can play baseball and it's going to mean earning your money and making a lot of money for the machine that it is, and it means a lot of little people make some money too, then get back to work. That's where it could get a little weird. Let's say, John, if everyone's ready to roll and that's the hang up.
I saw Passon just tweeted out like a video he did, I think with Van Pelt. It might have just been on Get Up. I don't know, one of those. And he said, funny thing is about that situation, I talked to a player. He's like, there are a couple guys in the league that I just bounce shit off of, right? And I started thinking, like, I wonder, is that Scherzer? Like, who he's talking to? So who he talking to? And he said, what if this meant you don't get paid, but you got to go to the Arizona thing? And the guy at first was like, maybe I just don't.
Again. What if you're saying you'd have to go do the 4.5 months in order to get paid?
Yes. Yeah, okay. So you'd have to go to Arizona or you guys just wouldn't get paid. Kind of like that funny word that basketball is using, that coup de jour, where they just, give you nothing, right? They have that ability.
Majeure, yeah.
Force majeure.
Yeah.
I'm trying to look for the video, but I think here it is. It was good, though.
No baseball in 2020, which means none of the players get paid.
Can you hear this?
In 2020. What is your sense of how that would go? I had this exact conversation. There's some players around the league who I, sort of use as litmus tests.
You got good hair.
For theories. And something like this had been percolating around. And so I asked a player a couple days ago, hey, if you have to go into a bubble city and you are separated from your family for an indeterminate amount of time, and this is a player who has a wife and kids, is that something that's going to work for you? And his initial response was, no effing way. Yesterday afternoon, I get a text from the same player. It says, talked with my wife, and she said, if the only way that I get paid this year is by having to go into the bubble, here I come, bubble.
So I think there are a lot of players that when you do the thing, money stops, because there would be that time. It might be in a month. It might be in whatever. Money goes to zero. And this is our option. I think a vast majority of players. I'm not saying Brett Anderson would be alone. I think he would be in the heavy minority of guys who just would say, fuck it, here we go.
And it also might be exactly what you just played, right? Where their first reaction is Brett Anderson's reaction or the guy that Passon talked to. And then everyone gets together and goes, all right, what are other options? And the answer is there are no other options. This is the option. That changes minds.
I ran out of shows to watch. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to rewatch the thing that got me to sign up for Netflix, House of Cards. And with Frank Underwood, the first 4 or 5 seasons are just fantastic. This is where the owners, their general managers, would have to be really utilize politically the agents to talk their players into this idea. And this is where I think, just big picture, in those 2 leagues, where the Bob Myers, where Farhans, whoever in basketball and baseball that are super tight, and luckily in baseball and basketball, for the most, I guess baseball can be a hit or miss with Scott Boras, but in basketball, it feels like most of the high-level GMs have really good working relationships. Same with baseball, actually. You need to talk these guys into it so we all benefit financially, right? And this is, because that's, again, Guy, my overall point with this, it's just about the fucking money. That's the only thing this is about. If money meant nothing, They would just take the year off, and it was just like, press pause for you, and they could do it. It's all about the money, because no one ever wants to go from, if this podcast was a $10 podcast, would we want to go to zero or make that $10 even if it got a little weird? Or let's say this, even if it was going to get a little weird, but we were able to make $7. Well, what if you were running a $10 million business and it was like, well, guys, we might go to zero this year. Or, it's going to be a terrible year, but we'll get to $6.5 billion. We'll fucking take our lumps, but we'll stay afloat. And that's all this is. That's the whole thing.
Of course.
Start and finish. Of course. But it's also back to the virus of, you're going to have to do some things probably that are uncomfortable, and definitely at first that are going to be viewed as pushing the limit. I think just whoever's first is going to be viewed as is going to be nowhere near like the majority of people being like, smart move. I'm not saying we won't like watching. I'm just saying when it gets announced, they're going to the bubble. People be like, what the fuck are they doing? Not necessarily with all the craziness of the umpires and the dugouts. I'm talking even before that. I'm just talking when they're going to go start the training sessions, right, as teams, and they're going to get daily corona checks. And I'm talking the immediate first steps, I think, will be have heavy pushback.
I think you're right. I don't disagree with you there. Why there will be pushback was my initial disagreement. But I think at the point in time that you're describing, I think there will be a question like, okay, what does Anthony Fauci say about this? What does he say? And then that will...
Is that Dr. Fauci's first name?
Yeah. Point guard. Regis High. You know what? Because one thing like Kirk Herbstreit came out and got crushed like a week and a half ago, right? And Brian Kelly was like, Kirk Herbstreit's not a doctor. And Dabo's like, Kirk Herbstreit's not a doctor. There's going to be football. And I'm like, yeah, Dabo, you're not a doctor. How the hell do you know? The one issue I had with Kirk was Kirk's statement was...
Are Dabo's kids on his team, or aren't Kirk's Herbstreit's team kids on the team?
Yes, or maybe they're done now, aren't they? Are they still there?
Yeah. I don't know.
Brian Kelly was really the one that crushed him at Notre Dame.
Lot of blowback from the college
and my thing
coaches.
was like, just listen to what he's saying. I don't think it's that crazy. Now, the one issue I would say is his statement. Basically, one of his premises was that you can't have sports until there's a or you can't have gatherings in general until we're able to have a what's it called?
Social distancing wipe.
A
vaccine.
Thank you.
I thought you were gonna be like, yeah, and then he was like, "I'm Monday Night Football, bitches. I'm out."
so that was his premise. That I thought when I heard it was, I don't think that's true. And then Dr. Fauci has since said he doesn't think we'll be waiting until there's a vaccine until we start getting things back up and running again. So. Here's the other thing.
I mean, if we have to wait till there's a vaccine, we're in a great depression.
Yeah, but I don't. That's so.
Because that's clearly not the plan.
No.
These guys
no
have
one's
been
saying
told that's
no one's
not.
saying that. No one's saying that. The other part of this is everybody got hit without a plan, holding their dicks, right? Basketball went from, we can keep playing, to canceling. College basketball went from, we'll play without fans, to canceling. This nation got exposed with his pants down a little bit. So
in fairness, it was a curveball kind of out of nowhere that we've been alive for 35. I've never seen.
But there were scientists who 2 years ago said there were things out there that could have been done, not to know we were preparing for this, but to be prepared for something that weren't done. But this is where I say, John, I think the lesson in all of that is you've got to prepare as if the things that we don't think you'll be able to do, you'll be able to do, so that when the moment comes that you're able to do them, you're ready. And so that's where, to your point with baseball, putting this stuff out there is like, yeah, they should be preparing for the second they're told, hey, you guys can execute this plan. It is healthy enough, it is safe enough to do this, that they're ready to do it. And the only way to be ready for something like that is to have conversations that feel uncomfortable ahead of time.
I guess back to what you said about things you could have been prepared for. To me, that's a government issue. Like I have a hard time with Adam Silver's just his words, but I can't necessarily blame the NBA or the NCAA or baseball of not knowing what the fuck to do.
Yeah, no,
right?
I'm with you. Yep.
Or everyone just like, what?
Yeah.
Like, or just any business. Like if you just run Del Monte Foods or, whatever. I can't blame it on the private sector at all.
No, I'm
like
not.
that
Yeah,
to
I
me
don't.
is a government deal. But I do know that clearly don't you agree that they've got positive news would be strong, but they've kind of been told some things on that call for this story to come out 2 days later, which they probably were doing their own research, feeling like it's kind of headed toward a positive way. So the NBA and baseball that have the pertinent things happening right now kind of start, maybe we can push our two plans. That's why they had the call this weekend. Well, and this all gets back to the NFL. They get a little lucky. They just get to like be on the conference call with their feet up because it's like time is kind of on their side, right? I'm not saying that they're not like worried, but they do have a buffer where every day that goes by for baseball is a negative, right? Every day that goes by for basketball is a negative. Like both these two sports want to start ideally as soon as humanly possible. Just like Haberman and Middlekauff's restaurant at the corner of whatever street wants to come back as soon as humanly possible and open up. That's where every single restaurant and just any business wants to open up as soon as humanly possible, right? And they probably a lot of them are going to do it. I guess there are rules and stuff with restaurants, right? The government can control you, but the leagues a little bit. I don't know. I don't know exactly how that would work. Maybe they would get put on some essential list.
Well, but what you're making me think is like they do have. I think one area where it would be why sports being one of the first things back without fans would be the most palpable pro sports is because the workforce makes so much money, right? Because a professional athlete is so well compensated for their work. That is different than saying we're opening candy factories back up and all the candy workers have to go back for minimum wage to start making Tootsie Pops. This one is one where people go, you're not really holding anybody's feet to the fire like a low-income worker who's going back to work in an unsafe environment. You're saying we have the money as an industry, as a baseball league, to make sure that we're testing people every day. We have the money as an NBA, as a league, to make sure we're testing people every day. Our athletes are so well compensated for this that whatever the risk is worth it to them. And so everybody is going into this eyes wide open. Like in that way, sports do have kind of I think an ability to, even though I'm with you, there will be some initial pushback, to kind of be welcomed back by everybody just because the people involved, there is so much money being generated from the very top of the totem pole to the very bottom of that financial totem pole. And on top of that, like people are going to enjoy, like it will perhaps be some vehicle for everybody together to be unified about something as a public.
I was very, I would have said Thursday and Friday, baseball and basketball were in major trouble. I think a little differently 4 days later, just with some of the information coming out about the curve, about some of these states. I mean, there are a lot of states that are really limited, death-wise. I mean, New York is really kind of an outlier in America when you look at some of the charts. Again, I'm not a doctor, but just look at some of these charts. We're actually doing pretty well, Guy. Our numbers are starting to decrease in California, and clearly because we quarantined so immediately. In some of the southern states, some states, even if they haven't followed the rule, just benefit from the way the state is set up. Like one thing New York just has working against it is the density and the amount of people. It's like, 3 or 4 times the size of San Francisco in terms of quantity of humans all kind of living like that. Very, European-like. It's just most of our cities, and definitely a lot of our states, like you go to Utah or you go to a lot of these states, they're not built
it's
like
one
that.
issue I had with people. I saw a lot of people early in the week making fun of the South on social media because there was a map that came out that showed by cell phone pings like the areas that did the least amount of traveling.
Yeah.
Well, and in like the East and in the Northeast and up and down the West, there wasn't as much traveling as there was in like, Wyoming, Montana, in the Midwest and the South. It's like, well, yeah, I don't have to travel as much. Like I can walk to the corner store and get what I need if I have to. In more rural areas, it doesn't necessarily mean people are hanging out more. It just means they have to drive a little further to get to their grocery store.
Someone did a maps, the same map of the average household that lives within a certain distance of a gas station or a food place, and it clearly is dramatically farther down there than it is where me and you live,
like
or someone in New York or someone in
Yeah.
Seattle. Oh, it's just, but that's where it's outrageous right now, and I do think the power, and I'm not even just using the sports media. It's just some of these things are so visceral when you see them. All of our reactions are similar, like because my first thought was like, oh, fucking South. And then you realize that I kind of read up. I'm like, yeah, this isn't even. We get a little context here, and then you realize this isn't. But you just see. Did you see the thing? CBS News tweeted out. I guess there's this chick on Instagram. She's like makes things up, and she made up that she was dying. She was a nurse, and she used fake video, and they retweeted it or they tweeted it. It was completely fake. It was a hoax. And the first, even Albert Breer in his MMQB was like, "This makes your heart hurt." And if you went into it without knowing, it was very powerful video. And that's what I think that what's difficult about this, what's great about the pandemic, you get information out pretty fast, right? Twitter, Facebook, TV, whatever. You got a lot of different avenues. There's also just a lot of craziness, and it makes it difficult and makes a situation get uncomfortable because a lot of people are basing their thoughts on information. Is everything you're getting or I'm getting true or not true? I don't know. That's what makes this whole thing kind of crazy. And back to the sports, they're going to come back at a time just because the way information's flying, and let's call it what it is, hysteria kind of sells, that it could be publicly on just Good Morning America. I'm not even talking about sports stuff. I'm talking about just on CNN. You might just get crushed for whatever that means. And like you said, history will ultimately say.
And I think, John, to that, like, I think the ultimate shield will be, what does the medical community say?
Like I listened to this Woj.
That'll be the shield.
Woj pod, and he brought up this idea. He's like, if the NBA does come back, if you're a team that was thinking about firing your coach, wouldn't the right move right now be to fire your coach and hire a new guy, and then have him, if you just get maybe like 3 or 4 regular season games, to work with some of your team? You just throwing it out there.
You're saying
I would imagine
somebody who's going to be your coach next year.
Yeah, like if you know your coaches are going to come back, but you're kind of waiting to see the finality of everything, whether you're a playoff team or even a normal team that maybe get in a couple regular season games, get the guy to work with your coaches. And then Bobby Marks was like, well, there would be some blowback if you just fire said coach mid-pandemic when everyone's quarantined. And I started thinking, what does that even mean? Like the guy was going to get fired no matter
I don't think
what.
It'd be any real blowback. I mean,
yeah,
he's still getting paid out either way.
Yeah,
this
the
isn't
situation
like most jobs
is
where it's like we're firing you and we're not paying you to the end of your contract. Like that guy's getting paid to the end of his contract.
It's not a $50,000 at-will worker getting furloughed.
Yeah.
So these are, this conversation I never thought we would have had.
I didn't either.
2 months ago.
I thought it would be 10. I thought it would be 15 minutes and we'd hit some bullet points and move on. But I don't know. Do you think? I'll finish with this. Do you think baseball will look? Do you think it'll feel like post 9/11 when the first sport comes back? George W. Bush throwing out the first pitch, Mike Piazza hitting the home run.
I think this is I think this coronavirus, it's pretty split. I talk to a lot of people that don't necessarily think it's fraudulent, but when you factor in the numbers to other things that are just a little uncomfortable with it all, and there are clearly people that think it's the worst thing ever. I think a lot of people in America are split over this. Where 9/11, there was a lot of, I would say the majority of people we're all Americans. I don't necessarily get that vibe right now. Not that we're not all on the same page, because we all are sharing certain sentiments, but I think you talk to one person, Corona's insane. I think if you talk to other people, they think it's overblown. And I don't think, you can't really talk shit about either one.
Yeah. I mean, I've yet to see a medical person that is talking like it's overblown.
When I say overblown, I just mean, did we need to shut down the economy? There are people that are going to go, I had to shut down my business or I lost my job because of this, and I see these numbers, and it's like again.
And the counter would be these are the numbers because we did those things. Yeah.
Yeah, but there are a lot of states where the numbers they didn't, and it's really New York would be the lead dog, and everyone else is way behind them, guy. I mean, they're just so. I think a lot of people that maybe if you're in North Dakota or whatever, and you've had to shut down your business, or even in Stockton, and you go, well, That's where I think you agree this is pretty split with who you talk to. Just the severity. And I don't mean I'm kind of over the top. I just think there are a lot of people that are just more shoulder shrug, like this sucks. We really need to do this. Not like this is the worst thing. I mean, this does suck. And then there are a lot of people that I actually think there's a lot more people that are probably think this is a little overblown. That you got to quarantine for. We're going to be going on by the time the draft comes around 6-7 weeks.
But I also think I do think a lot of that is because of the visceral. A lot of people are losing jobs. A lot of people are losing businesses. A lot of people are losing a lot of money. And I think it leads to more and more people thinking it's not necessary.
Well, if you lose your job, and most people in this America, the average household income is like $50,000, and you're out of a job, furloughed, laid off, but they tell you might be able to come back, and then you see these numbers, and it's hard to like. It just might. Again, I'm not in that situation, but I would understand anger, resentment, not understanding.
Yeah,
and I think it's easy for a lot.
Somebody said this to me yesterday, like, "Man, I'm just hopeful that, like, as a nation, we come out of this unified." And I was like, "Yeah, I can't be hopeful of that. I mean, like, I wish that would happen.
I see no chance on that. This is a polarizing issue.
Yeah.
To me, 9/11 wasn't that polarizing.
No, it was not. It was unifying, especially especially like the weeks and months immediately after. Like after the fact, there's been different. But in those, if you go back to those moments, like if you go back, I did the other day. You watch Mike Piazza's home run. It is.
Guys, it was the most unifying thing you and I have experienced in America by far. Yeah. Wasn't even close. Now it changed, a year later, started going to war. People get mad.
But there was, it was a clear good versus evil, us versus them. Yeah.
There was a 6-month period where it was like, fuck yeah, we're America. Motherfuckers.
And not all, as it turned out, not all of that was good, but yeah, that's what it clearly was.
I don't feel that right now at all.
Well, it's not the case. And it's not going to be at the end.
No.
So.
Good talk.
Yeah.
Quarantine life.
I know. All right. Well,
just keep chugging.
I'm trying to think if I can finish this with how I feel about whether or not baseball is coming back. Like you said, you feel differently 4 days later. I guess I do feel a little differently than I did 4 days ago.
Now, I don't necessarily think like I don't buy this is going to be in Arizona, but I do think that they are full steam ahead and making something happen. I think the NBA is the same thing.
I think what's the order they need? They need something that the owners and the players agree on, and then they need the seal of approval from the CDC. Like I said, that is going to be their shield from the CDC or just medical experts. That's going to be their shield. I know you guys hate this idea, but we've been told this is a medically responsible, socially responsible way to get back to business. And once they have that, they'll be ready to roll. And I think if they've got the money to make sure everyone's getting tested, if they have the buy-in from the players to stay sequestered, then yeah, I'm with you. I do think they'll get that stamp of approval in an amount of time that allows them to play some version of a season.
I also think they now desperately want to be first. I'm not saying that's necessarily right, but they want to beat the NBA to the punch, and they know they can because the NBA is going to be much more bound to public perception, social media. They love social media.
The NBA just doesn't have the NBA doesn't have spring training. They don't have just a logistical. They don't have a place to go.
Yeah, you're right. Baseball's just kind of lucky that way. Some teams have like multiple stadiums, right? I mean, there's a lot of stadiums
infrastructure in place where it's like just like you and I, like the day, like all right, we'll just start a YouTube and boom, it's just the two of us and we can do it. Whereas a much bigger company has never done anything in this way. I mean, they've produced the same thing, but they might not have ever done it based on one computer or two computers. They're just baseball's just more nimble.
Makes sense why basketball, their one idea is Vegas, because what do they do there? They have a summer league there, so they know some of logistically how they could work some of the hotels. Maybe they could already do some, like even if the MGM or the Wynn or whatever those are closed, they can do a deal with them. It actually is already they already have previous relationships in the area.
That would be the spot.
That really is kind of their spring training. They're actually lucky that they've developed these summer leagues, that they kind of have an idea. Because if Vegas, let's say they never fucked with Vegas. Let's say if they never fucked with Vegas, I think they'd be scrambling a little bit, right? I think that's just the first thing. Well, we used to go to Vegas. The entire league goes there. We work with the hotels there. We bring 20. we bring 20+ teams with 15-man rookie rosters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you would
build
just
the bubble.
and they would start just doing the math. Right? All right, we play 10 games a day starting at this time and go until this time, just like the summer league does. 2 different gyms.
Again, I mean, if we are quarantined all May, if you tell me, hey, we got 8 a.m. till 10 o'clock at night, we got Yankees to the Cubs to the Dodgers. I mean, I'm watching. Yeah. I got the TV on, guy. So
I'm in. Just Fauci sings the national anthem before every game.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine Dr. Fauci gets. I guess Donald's last 2 recipients were Tiger Woods and Rush Limbaugh, Presidential Medal of Honor. I think Fauci's in place for that.
He's in place for a lot. Whatever he wants.
Yeah.
He's just got to keep it. He's at the mountaintop. He just got to stay there. All right. Yeah. On that note.
See ya.